So today's video is not a tech video. As you can tell from the setup, it's new. I'm in my room, I'm on my bed. There are much more important topics to discuss right now, and I don't want to keep on making videos without addressing the issues going on in the world and specifically in America. And I want to bring more awareness and use my platform as a voice regardless of the consequences. And I want to give you guys a little context and insight on my early life and the way I go about things, how I see things, and my personal thoughts on race and racism, my thoughts on the protest, my thoughts on the case, and my thoughts on politics in general. So timestamps will be down below if you want to skip to whatever section you want to go to, because I don't know how long this video is going to be. So without further ado, let's start with my upbringing. I was blessed and fortunate enough to grow up in an area and that I think was a really good area. I didn't really notice too much crime in my area, and I'm just throwing numbers out here. I want to say that probably in my area it was probably like 80 to maybe even 90% white, and I definitely noticed there weren't too many black people around where I was growing up. So it wasn't really until middle school and high school where I got I don't want to say a culture shock, but it was definitely more diversity into my life. And I'm also going to say that I'm pretty blessed and fortunate enough to go to a college that was also quite diverse. So I got a lot of different backgrounds and perceptions on how people see the world. And I want to say, as you grow older, you start to develop your own perceptions on how you see the world. I do think that I am privileged from the way I was brought up, because I don't see races as superior or inferior. And whenever I go to describe someone, I say like, oh, this person's really intelligent, or this person's really quiet, this person's really creative. I don't really talk about a person's race when I'm describing someone, because it's irrelevant, right? It doesn't really matter what the color of your skin is. It's more of the skills, your values, your behavior, your personality. That's what matters. That's what people care about at the end of the day. And that's how I've always been, and that's how I am to this day on how I view people. We're all human, and there's no reason to be segregating or racially profiling people based on the color of their skin, especially in 2020. And unfortunately, it still happens, as we saw with the case of George Floyd. I don't keep up with the news either, because I think it's all just crazy headlines to get people's attention, get people riled up, get people anxious on. And then when you actually go and read the article, the headline has nothing to do with what you're actually reading or the content of what is actually happening. Overall, like, the news to me just seems very pessimistic on the world. And there's good news and there's bad news, but I do think that there is a lot more bad news that people see on a day-to-day basis than good news. And I think for the human brain, that's not good for you. Thoughts on race. So growing up, I learned that 1 in 3 African American males end up in jail. And with that in my mind, I always thought, like, I have to be on my best behavior 24/7, because no one plans to go to jail, right? No one wants to go to jail. That's not in someone's dream, I would think, that, hey, I want to go to jail. So from my perspective, I always thought I have to be on my best behavior, because I don't want the probability to be in my favor of going to jail, right? And there's just one story that I always tell my friends. It was when I was much younger. It was a cold night. It was just me and my mom. I think we were doing some shopping, and it was cold. And I had a hoodie on, and I put my hood on, and my mom took it off my hood and said, "Don't put that hood on." And I know why as a kid, because obviously she didn't want people to judge me for what I was wearing. And for me, I was just like, I'm cold. I just want to wear my hood and keep my head warm. But it's like, if I can't use the functionality of my hoodie to keep my head warm, it's like, why am I even going to wear the hoodie in the first place, right? And it was in that moment I realized, like, okay, so clearly there are things still going on that my mom definitely doesn't want to talk to me about, but clearly I'm aware that something is going on. So I really enjoy learning other people's cultures, their background, their history, the way they brought up, because how could you not in this day and age? Like, I don't understand how people want to live in their own bubble when this world is massive and it has so much diversity. And you'll notice that people actually share some of the values that you have, even though they're completely across the planet, right? And I feel like as you start exploring and learning about different people's cultures, you start to develop this sense of, we're all human. We have the same organs. We all breathe the same air. We bleed the same color. At the end of the day, we are all human. And like, and to whoever's watching this video on the other side, man, like I'm a human just like you. And I'm sure if we sat down and had a conversation, you'd realize that we probably have a lot more in common than you realize. And I think the issue going on right now is it's way above politics, man. This is a humanitarian issue. It's not a political issue. So next I want to talk about my thoughts on racism and just my personal experience with racism. And I'm going to be honest, I never really had any physical encounters of racism in my life. I don't want to say yet because I don't want it to happen to me ever. And I would say that the only thing that sticks out to me, like physically, growing up was whenever I started talking to people would be like, "Oh, you sound really white," and that would really confuse me as a kid because in my brain, I would be like, "I'm just speaking English. Like, what do you mean that I'm speaking white? Like, I'm just speaking the language," and it kind of got to that point where I was like, what are you trying to say? Right? Like, do you need me to like deepen my voice? Do I need to say bruh? Do I need to say cuh? Do I need to walk a certain way because of the color of my skin? And I mean, eventually I was just like, no, that's stupid. Like, I'm just going to act the way that I act based on my upbringing, and people are just going to accept me for who I am, right? There's no point of me trying to act a different way just to fit in. And it also really infuriates me when I see friends and people act like different people based on the group of people that they're with, because I'm just like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, just be yourself. As cliche as that sounds, man, just be yourself. You don't have to transform yourself into a different person just so you can feel like you can fit in. You should just be you should just be comfortable with who you are, regardless of your skin, your personality, the way you talk, the way you walk. It doesn't matter, right? So I would say that most of my racism, surprisingly, actually, I'm not even surprised. It came through online gaming. I would say I was surprised when I'm younger. Now that I'm older, I'm not surprised at all. But through online gaming, man, the things people say, like, racism is alive and well if you do any type of online gaming. The things people say, man, it's questionable. I've been called the N-word with the hard R multiple times. People saying it to me directly. And to me, it's just like why? Like, how? Who? So I had a friend at the time, keyword, had a friend, who I told him that I got this new job and I was super excited. And I was shocked by what he said. I was kind of taken aback. He said that I only got this job because I'm black. And I was shocked, if I'm gonna be honest. And he was my friend at the time, so I was trying to have an open conversation with him, trying to discuss like why he thinks I got this job because of my skin color, not because of the skills or if I was qualified. And it didn't really seem like he was budging on his viewpoints on how I got the job. He was saying like stuff like, "Oh, this company needs more diversity, X, Y, and Z," and I'm just like, all right, I think we just got to agree to disagree, man, because I do think I'm qualified for this job. And in fact, I excelled at the job. And, unfortunately, I had to burn a bridge with a person I thought that was my friend over race. And, it's sad, man. It's sad to say that out loud. So I haven't had too many encounters with the police or cops in general. I'm usually at the right place at the right time. But when I do get pulled over, my anxiety definitely builds up. And, the things that are going through my head is like, is now my time? Am I going to get a bad cop? Am I going to get shot for reaching for my wallet? And, it's like, I shouldn't be thinking these things in 2020. Nobody should be thinking these things in 2020, and I've been pulled over like a total, I think like 4 times in my lifetime. Each time is scarier than the last because I always think, oh, whew, I got lucky. I'm going to knock on some wood. That, thankfully I'm blessed that nothing has unfortunately happened to me. And I did have an incident back in February before the whole COVID-19 thing hit where I left my place at 3 a.m. to go help my friend sort out a situation in a different state because I think he was getting screwed over his car loan. And I got pulled over by a cop on my way there. And it was a really interesting conversation because it really tried to make he really tried to make it seem like I wasn't the owner of the vehicle. And even when he went to go run my plates and license, it took this guy like 30 to 40 minutes. And mind you, I had my hands on the steering wheel the whole time because I didn't want him to think of something else. And, you know, in my head, I'm just like, what is taking this guy so long to run my license plate and my registration and my license? Like, everything is valid and I have a clean record. Like, it should not take this long. Like, what is this guy doing? Like, in my head, I'm thinking, is this guy trying to fabricate a story? Is he gonna come back out and say, you know, sir, step out the vehicle? But, you know, thankfully, I still don't know what took this guy so long. Thankfully, nothing happened. He let me go. I'm blessed to this day. Still have not had any bad encounters, but I would say that's the only encounter I've had where it was a little bit sketchy. But man, like those thoughts that go through your mind when you get pulled over, those are not thoughts anybody should be having, especially in 2020, man. So moving on to my thoughts on the case, and I'm probably just gonna give a brief overview for people who don't know about it, but I also want to talk about how I actually came to knowing about the case. So like I said before, I don't really follow the news because it is just, I think, really pessimistic. And so my friend actually reached out to me about the death of Floyd, and I didn't really pay too much attention to it, not to be disrespectful, I just want to be honest. And I was really just focused on SpaceX and the NASA launch that was happening. And it wasn't until I had another friend contact me about the death of George. And that's when I was like, okay, if two people are reaching out to me, then this is probably a serious issue. So I decided to do my own research, and the New York Times actually did a pretty good overview of what happened, the whole 9 minutes. And dude, like if you haven't watched the video, it's pretty hard to watch, man. Like watching a person die in front of your eyes and having other people around sitting there numb to what is happening, like it's a mixture of emotions, but I would say the two that stand out is just sad and mad. Like, wow, man, like, it's just wow. And what infuriates me most about the video is, yes, he is saying he can't breathe, but the cop is also asking him, like, are you gonna get in the car? Are you gonna comply? And George is saying yes, like I will get in the car. But the cop doesn't move. He still has him pinned on the ground. So it's like, why are you even asking the question in the first place if you aren't going to move? It's like, why do you have your knee on his neck in the first place, right? Like, God, it just makes me so mad listening to that part. Like, that's an example of your voice not being heard. This is why people are mad, right? And even though the paramedics arrived afterwards, the guy still had his knee on his neck for a minute later. It's like, and the other cops are watching him. Like, it's just that it's like, are they numb to human life at that point? I think all 4 cops that were involved should be punished to the full extent of the law. And I do think that the first person who did the autopsy to try and cover up the death and try to cover up the cops should also be punished to the fullest extent of the law, because he was trying to say that, you know, it was his intoxication that killed him. And it's like, no, dude, like another autopsy came out and clearly he died because he wasn't getting enough oxygen to his brain and the compression of his chest being put on the ground like that. He didn't die from being intoxicated. I think George's murder is the perfect imagery of why this uproar is going on, because this guy is saying he can't breathe over and over and over again, and nobody cares. We are voicing our opinion on this matter over and over and over and over again, and it happens over and over and over again, and it just seems like nobody is listening. You know what I also hate the most is when I get a phone call from my mom and I'm like, oh, she just wants to check up on me and whatnot, and it's like she said, oh, you have to be careful, someone just got shot. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, for example, there was a time And I can't remember. I think it was like a year ago. It happened in Texas where she called me saying like, make sure you have your apartment door locked. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, this cop just killed this. This cop killed this guy. I think his name was Botham Jean, and he was just eating ice cream and getting ready for bed. And he was completely unarmed the entire time, and he was in his own building. And I don't want to have phone calls with my mom to keep me aware of the racial profiling that is going on in this country, right? I hate having those conversations with her. I don't even want to say just in America, because I don't want to take away from the actual movement, but I do think there's racism all over the world that needs to be talked about. But specifically, like I said, I want to stick with the US. I do think racism does exist in the US, so you need to stop believing that it doesn't exist. Also, I just want to say rest in peace, George Floyd, seriously. And to all his family members, I give out all my condolences to you. No amount of money or justice will ever repay the life of a person you genuinely, deeply care about, have their life be taken away from you. So now I want to give my thoughts on the protesters, the looting, the riots, the violence. I want to first say that the people protesting for Black Lives Matters in America and all over the world, shout out to the people around the world supporting this movement. We all do appreciate it. This has been going on for so long, and I think year after year after year after year after protesting, that it's still happening, that these silent protests just aren't going to cut it. And I think with the mixture of COVID-19, the quarantine, the mandate stay-at-home orders, people having their jobs lost, it's like there's just so much injustice and pain that is going on in the world right now that I think people are just, I think with the death of George Floyd, that it was just the final straw for people, and that, it's just probably just blind rage for them at this point. So I don't agree with the whole destroying local infrastructures and businesses. I don't think that's the right message that we are trying to send across for the Black Lives Matter movement. I do know that there are people who are going out and doing the silent protesting in the right way, and then that there's other people coming out of states who are trying to disrupt the protest. And the only thing people remember from the protest are the final moments, the violence that happens at the ends, right? That's what's being captured by the news. That's what the news wants you to see, and that is not the message people should be getting from these protests, right? And I want to say that, you can probably already tell from the video and everything I've said, I'm for the people. I support Black Lives Matter. We're all human, man. We, like I said before, we breathe the same air. We have the same organs. We bleed the same blood. We have more in common than you think. Just because the color of my skin, other people's skin, it doesn't matter, right? We are human at the end of the day. And I think that's what people need to start looking at other people for. Humans. We are just human beings. Like I said before, with Corona still about, the media likes to switch gears really quick to make people forget about things, shove things in your face so you can learn about this topic and this topic only. Corona's still around, and I do think that with these protests, these mass gatherings, that, it's only going to get worse for everyone in general. And I think with these mandate quarantines, I thought it was going to loosen up, but now with everything going on, I do think that these quarantines are going to come back. And I think with people being forced back in their homes, it's going to even make them more pissed, make them even protest even more. And it's like, it's just messed up. It's a really weird time right now. If you are protesting, I will say be safe and be aware of your surroundings. Make sure you're going for the right reasons. Don't just try and loot local businesses, because there are these small business owners that, their business is their livelihood. And if you destroy their infrastructure, they don't have anywhere else to turn to. So I don't support the looting, the rioting, but I am for the protesting. So now I want to talk about my views on politics, and I guess this is a touchy subject for some people, but I'm going to be pretty open about it. I don't really like to engage in politics in general because I feel as though it's very polarizing. Like, I feel like it's very one-sided. Like, you have to go in, picking a side, and if you're on that side, you have to agree with everything that side says, disregard what the other side is saying, and you pretty much just avoid major issues that are above politics. And there are it's major world issues, but since you're so busy bickering and complaining about things that don't really matter just because you guys are on opposing sides, that nothing gets done ultimately. Is this side for police brutality? Is that side against police brutality? It's like, why are these questions even a thing in politics? Like, clearly it is police brutality. Objectively, it is. It doesn't matter what side you're on. There should be no agree or disagree. It is what it is. In clear white, it is what it is. It is a humanitarian and equality issue. This is not a political issue. And if we have to discuss this over politics, that says a lot about the system that we're in. Asking these questions only makes it more polarizing and divided. And I think that's what I try to avoid, right? I avoid trying to pick sides. And even in my personal life, I do this as well. And I know it ticks off some of my friends because when I try to look at things objectively from both sides, like I start talking about the other person's perspective and then their perspective. And people think that I'm afraid to join a side, but it's like no. It's like I can see their point of view on why they're acting this way, and I look on the other side and it's like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but this person is saying this. You should probably hear what they have to say and understand where they're coming from. Maybe you're misunderstanding them. Maybe you should clarify. Maybe you should ask them, hey, am I being clear? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? But it's like you guys are just trying to force your views without actually trying to have a real conversation. And I try to come in as the objective party and say, hey, this is what this person's saying. Hey, this is what the other person is saying. Do you really understand what you guys are talking about? And both sides end up hating me because I'm not joining their side and I'm on nobody's side, and they automatically put me on the other side and hate me. And it's like, I'm just gonna leave it on there, man. Like, if you don't think I should join your side because I don't agree with everything you say and you automatically put me on the other side and hate me for it, so be it. That's all I can say, man. So this pretty much wraps up the video. And if my audience is divided because of this, so be it. If you aren't about equality, then, I don't want you watching my videos in the first place. If you decide to leave because of what I've said, like I said, so be it. I'm for the movement. Black lives do matter, obviously. And it's like we are on a rock in space floating as a human race. And I think that's how people need to look at it. We are all human, right? And I don't want to say all cops are bad, but it really does feel like there is a decent amount of portion of bad cops, and I think it needs to change. So keep your head up. I got faith things will change, hopefully sooner than later. Comments are always open for discussion, as always. So if you want to share your own stories, your views, voice your opinion, you're free to do that. And no more videos for the time being because, to be honest, I'm just not in the mood to make videos right now. And like I say in my videos, guys, as always, much love.